Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot testing, and today we've got a rather interesting combination that one of you guys said, hey, why don't you try this out and see what happens a couple weeks ago, and I'm definitely curious to see what it does as well. This is one of those combos where it's a pretty interesting conglomerate of things, whether between the shell, the gun, the choke, all of that. It may work and give us a nice performance, or it may be a pretty terrible performer at the same time. It could legitimately go either way. I don't know what we're going to see out of it yet, but it's worth a shot because we do have potential here anyway. But first up, for the shells we're running, I brought out some of these Federal Power-Shok buckshot loads. These ones being the 12 gauge, 3-inch, 41 pellet load of 4 buck at about 12-10 feet per second. We've tested our fair share of Federal Power-Shok buckshot loads. These are usually never the greatest, but if you get the right choke and the right constriction for them, they can be perfectly adequate performers. That goes for these 4 buck variations of them as well. They're fine. They're not the best, but they're not the worst either. But when it comes to 4 buck in particular, I found that a little bit tighter than a full choke usually works out in our favor. Something between a full and extra full territory, which is kind of what we have here in a sense today. So we'll see how they do through today's setup. As for that setup, I brought out the Mossberg 835 Ulti-Mag. It's got a 28-inch barrel on it, and for the choke, we have an original Truglo Gobble-Stopper turkey choke in here. Now, these are advertised to be a 679 for a constriction. If you don't know, the 835 is an overboard shotgun to a 10 gauge bore diameter, so typical turkey choke range is 680 to 695 is usually what it is. However, my Truglo here measures at a 695, so not really accurate to the box claim at all, and I've heard that from several people that have these original Gobble-Stoppers. They're all supposed to be a 679 for these guns. I've heard 690, I've heard 695 in the case of mine, I've even heard 700. So kind of inconsistent all over the board, but that poses for a pretty interesting test. This is a turkey choke constriction, even at 695, based on the 835 bore, but 695 is very typical full choke constriction in a standard 12 gauge bore. So it's a bit more constriction at the end for an 835, but it's typical for a regular bore. Will it work? Will it not? I don't know. One of you guys said, hey, run some 41 pellet 4 buck through this and see what happens. So that's what we're going to do. So as for today's test, we're running everything the same as we usually do. I've got the big sheet of paper set up at 40 yards with the chrono and templates as well. So we'll get you guys a view of that target and see how this combination works. We've got a shell that usually performs decent with this area of constriction, but it's an overboard shotgun, and that constriction is a little tighter down into the turkey choke range based on the bore diameter, and it just is kind of a big mix and match here that may work or may not. So let's take our shot and see exactly what it's capable of. All right, that shell gave us 1264 through the chrono. We have a boss claim of 1210, so we are a little bit above that claim. We do have an overboard barrel and stuff as well, so that sometimes plays with our velocity a little bit. Either way, mid 1200s, perfectly fine for 4 buck out to 40 yards. So let's head down there and see what that Truglo choke actually gave us with those Federals. Alright, so here we are down at our 40-yard target. Definitely see some pretty interesting results down here as well. It sort of kind of worked, and it sort of kind of didn't at the same time. It's definitely on the blotchy side for sure. The white dot was the point of aim. We had a nice little hot clump of pellets right there to the right of it, and then we string a few random ones up there towards the top, and then we have another little ball of shot at the bottom left of the white dot, and then another little hot string of shot down a little lower, and 3 in a row over here on the right, and it's just little clumps of pellets kind of everywhere there. This is 40 pellets that we have circled on the paper here, so we're missing 1 pellet somewhere. Could have maybe went in the exact same hole and was hard to see the difference, or most likely it probably was a little bit of a flyer off one of the edges left to right there, or who knows, maybe Federal's starting to become like Remington and put random amounts of pellets in their buckshot loads. We've seen that from Remington several times. I don't know that that's the case here. I think it's a flyer most likely, but 40 pellets, it's a good number of buck flying down range for sure. We have an okay pattern, and also not very preferable looking for a lot of hunting situations with how blotchy it is. I did measure everything. Again, 40 pellets on the target. We have have 26.5 inches wide by 24.5 inches tall. So it's a pretty even size of pattern. Just the spread within there is very much all over the place, very clumpy. So maybe this was a little too much constriction at the end of an 835 overboard barrel, where it kind of just started to blow our results open a little bit down here. Maybe it's just not quite the right choke combo in the first place. Technically it's a turkey choke, but still it's non-ported, doesn't have any steps or straight rifling or anything in it. So I don't know, this is somewhere in the middle. It's not terrible, but it's not pretty looking either. So interesting to see what it looks like on the blank sheet of paper, kind of all over the place, but let's throw a couple templates up and see how it actually looks in a hunting scenario. First up, we have our deer template. We have a front leg at the bottom and the neck just starts off to the right side. This is very close to average kind of white-tailed deer torso size, if you will. If we put the white dot kind of right in the center of our vital area there, we would have absolutely covered that deer's chest cavity in pellets, no question about it. Dead deer? Yep, sure is. But with how blotchy and splotchy and all over the place it is, you would have hit a lot of different areas as well. You would have put a number of them through the vitals, but you also would have put some a little farther back into the gut area and starting up there towards the neck and stuff as well. So a little bit all over the place, although certainly good enough for a deer hunt if you wanted to use that combo. Next up, we have a coyote template. Same story, very close to average life size for this cutout. I know not everybody uses 4-buck for deer hunting purposes, but it is a very good option when it comes to predators, if you're running a shotgun anyway. And yep, that coyote would be having a very bad day. A ton of them through the vital area. You've got several up the neck, several down towards the leg area. It would have been just blotchy areas of shot that would have covered just about everything on him. So bad day to be a predator for sure. Coyotes, foxes, anything like that, not going to make it through that spread out to 40 yards or so, but still kind of splotchy and all over the place. So it would certainly work for different hunting scenarios. It's just going to come down to whether or not you want to use this splotchy of a pattern for those actual hunting situations or not. And finally, we have a torso cut out here. Obviously, we're not necessarily talking about a defensive scenario out here at 40 yards with this type of combination. But for those people that may not be hunters and may have a little better reference on a torso template, this is a regulation 18x30 cutout. So you can see exactly what we're looking at here. Plenty of pellets through the torso to get the job done. So now those guys will have a good reference point to work off as well. Still a little splotchy, but certainly good enough to do the job if the situation ever required it anyway, even all the way out here at 40 yards for whatever reason you can possibly think of. And here's the wad out of that shell. Pretty much all of Federal's buckshot loads have a wad in them nowadays. Most of them are these style. Unless it's a flight control loading, then it will have a flight control wad in there. But this is the typical Federal buckshot type of stuff. Pretty thin. There's obviously pellets stacked above it as well, but it seems to help them out a little bit. You can see a little bit of their buffer material still sitting in the bottom of it down there. These are not a plated pellet, but they are buffered. But the wad itself looks perfectly fine overall. $6.95 is a turkey choke for an 835, but obviously we're not over constricting these yet based on our wad and physics anyway. Maybe for pattern purposes possibly, but we're not poking through anything on the wad or nothing like that I'm worried about here. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about these results right here? Definitely a little bit hit or miss. It's obviously good enough to do the job for whatever situation you'd want to run it to out to 40 yards. Deer, pigs, predators, two-legged creatures, doesn't really matter. It's going to do the job, but it's not a pretty looking pattern either. It's very blotchy, a little bit all over the place, hotter clumps here and there. So pretty hit or miss pattern. If you don't mind having a little more blotchy spread, it's going to certainly do the job. But I think for a lot of us, we wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more even of a pattern than that. Even if we may not have a super dedicated hot core to it, a nice even spread is probably a little more preferable for a hunting situation anyway. So this kind of sort of worked and it kind of sort of didn't. I think this is one of the rare times where one of these kind of interesting, all over the place, borderline combinations also gives us kind of right down the middle, so-so kind of results. Usually when we get these more out in left field ideas, they either work really well or they don't work at all. And I'd say we're somewhere kind of right down the middle here. But leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Power-Shok 4-buck loads and maybe put them through tighter chokes like what we did here today? today? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is this a pattern or a combo you would actually ever do anything with or hunt with? Or would you much rather see it a little bit more even than what we got here? And what other testing do you want to see when it comes to either those buckshot loads through other combos, or maybe run some other buckshot load through that same Truglo choke we ran today? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.